One of the hospitals we work with them, they were paying per month $30,000 for the cost of diesel. Can you imagine $30,000? And then the other ones are just whenever there is electricity, we work. Whenever there is not, a dialysis machine stop working and people losing their life.
Welcome to the Smarter E podcast special, a 6-part miniseries recorded live at the Smarter E Europe, which took place in June in Munich. Having visitors from all over the world flocking to Munich to visit the Intersolar, the EES, Power to Drive, and EM Power, we used the opportunity to sit down with some of them and dive deeper into some of the major current topics. Enjoy. Well, for the 6th of our episodes and the last episode of this special recorded here live during the Smarter E Europe, we want to use the chance that people actually are coming here from all over the world, and we want to tap into an international topic beyond Europe. We want to tap into solar projects in Africa. Africa, of course, has a huge untapped solar potential. I know here, looking at it from a European perspective, we always focus a lot on the EMEA region in regards to green hydrogen in the future, but that's just one thing we need to discuss. Much more important, of course, is also the significance of off-grid solar power supply and other applications for the continent itself. I know that in the sub-Saharan region, we have, I think, more than 500 million people still who are not connected to electricity or to the grid. And not only that, it's not only about electricity, specifically decentralized solar generation can also contribute to much more than that and really address crucial development issues. We're going to dive into a very specific project here, just to really talk hands-on, and it's an integrated solar water desalination project at Lodwar Hospital in Kenya, realized by Boreal Light and supported by the German development cooperation with the Develop with 3P.de program, a flagship project that really contributes to a variety of sustainable development goals. And I'm very glad that I have the opportunity to sit down here with two experts at the same time, with Ahmad Beheshti and with Ahmad Sandid. So Ahmad is the co-founder and CEO of Boreal Light and really has been like the driving force behind Boreal Light for more than 9 years already. And Ahmad is business count for development of the German Agency for Development Cooperation, GIZ, and has worked as development cooperation advisor for the German Renewable Energy Federation and the German Solar Industry Association for more than 7 years. So welcome, Ahmad.
Pleasure.
And welcome, Ahmad.
Thank you.
Just look right into the project itself, and then we're going to address a couple of more general questions, issues, and potentials. But if we look into the integrated solar water desalination project at Lodwar Hospital in Kenya, it's a flagship project really for the development of solar power to water supply on the African continent. Can you give us an overview of the project? Why did you choose specifically this project? What are the components and why is it so significant? The issue of this Lodwar Hospital and the challenge of water and electricity is actually from a greater perspective started when COVID started. All of us in our generation, we faced with a big challenge of Corona. And then we kept saying, have a good drinking water, wash your hands, hygiene. What about people without have any of those access to those hygiene water, hygiene wash water, and etc. And not just people, how about hospitals? The biggest hospitals in one province, in one county, without have access to power, without have access to water. So hospitals that were supposed to be the front line of fighting COVID, we thought that they should be good, just giving them vaccines, but actually they were suffering from much greater challenges, electricity and water. So the whole project started from that perspective of helping the frontliners of fighting COVID in East Africa, fighting COVID sustainably. So not just fighting COVID, but doing it sustainably. This was the initiation of the whole project. That was where GIZ tapped in and then doing a research about it. First, there should be some, concrete base at what we want to do. What is the problem? How should it be answered?
Exactly. And as Hamid said, exactly few months before Corona started, we were in touch with Hamid and talk about piloting some of his systems. That was December 2019. And then March 2020, we got in touch with Hamid and say, Hamid, it's not enough to pilot. We have many hospitals in East Africa or in Africa in general. We need to provide them with the hygiene water. So can you step in and provide 28 hospitals with your systems? And this is what Ahmad did in the first phase of this funded project by Develop PPP, which is one of the funding instruments of our ministry, the Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development.
So let me just ask some stupid questions here. I assume that in terms of power supply, they probably were run by diesel generators so far, or actually connected to the national grid? What usually is like when you come in, what's the base setup there?
If there is diesel, if there is a grid, and if there is a grid, if there is electricity grid. So there are big if there. Yes, there were diesel engines, there were the grid, national grid, but with huge cutouts. Imagine the biggest hospital having running 2 days without electricity. And at the end, paying a super high bill for electricity. So these are the big challenges. Absence of electricity in many of the hospitals we work with, and then those having the electricity either from diesel, huge cost, or one of the hospitals we work with them, they were paying per month $30,000 for the cost of diesel. Can you imagine $30,000? And then the other ones are just whenever there is electricity, we work. Whenever there is not, a dialysis machine stop working and people losing their life.
So, of course, if the diesel is that expensive, you naturally do not think about using it for anything else than electricity. You're certainly not thinking about using the generator on top of that for desalinating water, I suppose. So also then the clean energy is an enabler to actually be able to financially run more than one use case.
In one case, we should look at it actually from the other direction. If there is no electricity, we can still survive. But when there is no water, we cannot survive. So they give really in many of those applications, if they had diesel, they would run their diesel engine, if the desalination engine, if there is. And many of them they did not have, so they were trucking water. We had an hospital was trucking water for 100 kilometers, 70 kilometers, just bringing every day 2 big bowsers coming to the hospital, bringing water that was not really drinkable. It was just from another borehole with less salinity, putting a lot of chlorine in it and delivering it to the hospital in a most unsustainable way.
As super unsustainable, connected to a lot of logistic costs as well. So I already can hear by your answer that this is really addressing multiple issues and multiple problems. If we break it down to the sustainable development goals, what range of goals are you addressing with that kind of project?
Maybe just take a step back to the 29th project, which we realized with Boreal Light, because with the first 28 projects, our focus was only on water desalination using solar energy. So for that, the SDGs would be in this case 6 and 7, water and affordable renewable energy. But with the last project, what we did is we expanded this project from only a water energy project to a little bit more than that. This is why we built together with Boreal Light a bigger solar system, water system, biogas system, and then fish farm, a vertical farm, and a small recycling field to recycle the bottles. So then we are tackling more SDGs, which in this case will be 3 for a better health conditions in the hospital, and which other SDGs? Infrastructure, of course, is one of the SDGs.
And then hunger.
So just because people can't see it, but I saw it on your website, you have a very nice schematics of the whole cascade. It starts with the PV panels. You use those for the desalination. Then the desalinated water can be used as drinking water. Then, of course, you have a residue of very salty water, which then can be used for fish tanks. You farm fish. Obviously, that's food. You can use the salted water for algae. That's probably even more nutritional value. And then how does the biogas come in there?
You know, the biogas system is a very interesting fit to what Ahmad also mentioning. We wanted to have some plastic recycling. So plastic recycling, always the issue is how about the electricity and the heat we need for plastic recycling? Because in this specific hospital in Lodwar, where we had 150 kg of plastic bottles every day, and we were planning to recycle that. We thought about another innovation. Why not adding a biogas when we have plenty of organic waste from the farm? So we are using the organic waste from the farm and the entire organic waste from the kitchen and the hospital, is a big hospital, feeding into the biogas system. The gas from the biogas system is running an engine, and the engine is running the plastic recycling facility. And the biogas system is also delivering gas to the kitchen of the hospital. Instead of burning wood, burning charcoal, then you have clean gas to run the ovens.
Another stupid question here. If they do not need to truck in all the drinking water, are they not going to run out of plastic bottles soon because you're producing it on the ground and maybe bottling it differently?
Plastic bottles are the one that people, when they afford, they buy it. Otherwise, the hospital never delivers water in plastic bottle. They just bring a big tanker.
And then we have to consider the plastic bottles collected outside of the hospital, because many people are planning to come to the hospital to sell these bottles to the hospital. So the hospital will recycle it and will smelt it and make a blocks out of it to use it in different areas. So it will be an additional income for the hospital, collecting bottles from the area around the hospital.
I love that again, because it's really so multi-layered here. The approach is that on the one hand, you can make sure that actually plastic bottles in that area get collected, not just thrown into the environment or mixed up with other trash. Then those people collecting them can generate an additional income. The hospital then again can use it as raw material to do whatever they're going to do with those recycled plastic blocks. So that's really interesting, because not only is it a cascade, PV to unsalted water, salted water, to fish, to algae, to being used probably on the farm in one way or the other. Then we have the biogas, then it has an effect on the trash situation around in the whole region, generating additional income. And that all just starts with PV.
All by PV. Everything started by solar energy. Actually, we added water to PV. It wasn't the other way around. So we all started from the photovoltaic, and the entire power needed for this machine is coming from the machine, and the other elements of the project is all coming from solar. So the aerification that we are using, oxygenation we are using, disinfection we are using for the fish tank, all of that is again powered by the same solar array. The pumping we are using for a big vertical farm in the hospital, again getting water and power from the same machine, from the same array, is all around solar.
It's not just a linear project, it really is creating a whole ecosystem. So now another critical question. You said that before they were getting the water from like some very deep borehole, maybe a couple of kilometers away, 50, 100 kilometers away, not so good quality. Where do you then get the salty water from at that hospital? And does that might have a negative effect one way or the other?
Anyway, all of us, we get water from, in this specific one, we get water from a borehole. So boreholes are the single source of available water, but the point is the boreholes are saline. It's not that there is no salinity, the boreholes are saline. In this specific case, the depth of borehole in Lodwar Hospital is 180 meters. And water is coming with a salinity that you cannot even drink it, you cannot even do irrigation with that. So there is a misunderstanding of many of the desalinations. We always think desalination is just for direct sea, but plenty of locations around the world, mineral contamination of raw water, of borehole water is a big challenge. And the case is not just salt. In many places we have not salt in raw water, but we have chloride, fluoride, calcium, sodium, nitrates, you name it. Many other minerals that makes water non-drinkable and also not good for irrigation.
And all those minerals you're able to filter out with your desalination plant.
All of that.
And another tricky question here is, even if you put the salty water into the fish tanks, I guess you're just going to have more salt water supply than fish, I suppose. So is there any issue with getting rid of the salty water then? Because I guess you cannot just flush it into the landscape because it then is too highly concentrated.
There are two different issues here. One is the level of salt that you can release to the environment. In this specific project and in several others of these hospital projects, since we are getting raw water from, not from ocean, but from a borehole, even if we go for the 90% recovery rate, means taking 90% of, or 99% of all what is minerals out, still the concentration is far lower than anything of like a seawater or super high brackish water. So this is one. Second, there are standards for releasing salt water into the environment. You need to build some specific soak pits, it's called. I don't want to go to the details of it. But there is one important issue. What we do, every day we are feeding the fish tank with the wastewater coming from the machine. It's a brine and it's crystal clear, free from bacteria, viruses, but it's just saline. We keep adding water into the fish tank, and the outcome from the fish tank, there is also an outlet going out, and we are using that water that is salty, but it's nutritious because we grow thousands of fish in it. We are growing salinity tolerant crops from that water. It's called salicornia. We are growing salicornia now. Salicornia can bear even direct seawater. We grow salicornia. At the moment, humans in that country, in Germany, we eat salicornia. You can buy it from shops. But in Kenya, we use it for cattle feed. It's perfect food for cattle, and it's just full of minerals, and even it absorbs a lot of minerals. So this is the way we call it a circular economy.
That gives me a perfect segue to ask my next question, because we started out with really supplying clean water for the absolute basic needs like drinking and hygiene and fighting COVID, as we heard in the beginning. But now can this suddenly also lead to really addressing food security on a larger scale?
Sure. In the hospital, in this specific case, imagine we had the biggest hospital in Turkana County. They weren't able to give food to the patients. Patients are there for 1 month, 1 week, whatever. The food the families they should bring, the food that the hospital was giving was extreme basic, no nutrition in it. Now the project has a farm with close to 10,000 crops in it, vertical farm. And then we have the fish farm with several thousands of fish. They are breeding, keep breeding. So it's a big one with 200 cubic meter fish tank. So these ones are adding fresh vegetables and fresh protein, high quality protein every day to the canteen of the hospital. So you see, it's another level, and the hospital's cost for all this setup is almost nothing. Almost nothing. We did the capital investment there, and then it's just every 2 months the hospital is just adding new seedlings to the vertical farm. The harvest is every 2 months.
Now, it just sounds like such a perfect solution. It's almost mind-blowing. Looking at it from the GIZ perspective, is it a project that you need some initial investment for, and then after a certain time it's actually able to sustain itself? Or how does it run, and what kind of obstacles do you have looking from the development perspective?
This is exactly the reason why we stepped in. We know that Boreal Light is doing solar water desalination projects, but we wanted to make it more integrated. We want to tackle different challenges. And we know that when you integrate many technologies, when you make the project bigger and offering more solutions, it's more complicated. Then we move to the next step, which is the project development phase. We know how difficult it is for companies. They have great ideas, but to go to develop a project without having any funds, it's difficult for companies, especially when we talk about SMEs, small and middle enterprises. So this is why we step in as GIZ and say we say we have different problems. You can provide one of these solutions. Do we have feasibility studies in the market showing the technical and financial feasibility of such a project? Ahmad said, no, I'm not aware of any of these studies. This is why we stepped in. We hired a consultant who did interviews with hospitals, and then we came out with this project idea. So we tackled the obstacle of the project development phase. This is the first obstacle that we see. The second one is the awareness of the partner for such a solution, because you need a huge amount of know-how to transfer to the partners, and this is where Ahmad stepped in and say, I will train people there. I will let them be ready to deal with this system from all solutions, and then they will be ready to do the operation and maintenance, which is also the third obstacle is the O&M. In many cases, we build projects, we leave the area, and then no one take care of the operation and maintenance of this project, then it fails. Then Ahmad said, I will train them. I will be at least 2 years responsible for the O&M. And then we need the final point, the final obstacle is financing. We need to see how can we finance similar projects in different hospitals in different areas, because this project is funded one. It's not 100% commercial one. And now we are working together with Ahmad and with the hospital to collect data to understand how much savings are coming out of the project. And we want to make a business model out of it, and then go to banks and see how can we make it a commercial project.
I was just going to ask about that, because as we heard earlier, those hospitals were really putting huge sums into diesel. Now, if you compare that can you just say, well, the funds that were being used before, they're much smarter invested into that kind of project and then sustain the project in itself? So how big is the feasibility for it being really a commercial approach?
The feasibility is huge. The problem with renewable energy projects in general, that it's very capital intense. So at the beginning, it's not pay as you go. The hospital is now paying every month some money for clean water, some money for electricity, some money for food. But now we are asking a hospital to pay a huge amount of money at the beginning, then not pay anything in the next years. So this is the challenge that we have. It's like buying a car with the fuel for this car for the next 10 years.
And the spare tires and the spare parts on top of it.
Exactly. So this is exactly here our challenge. This is why we need to understand the savings of this hospital and see if you can, from these savings, pay off your credit for the bank. And after 5, 6, 7 years, the system will be yours and you will get water, electricity, and biogas for free. We need some OPEX, cost to operate and maintain the system, but it's a very small amount in comparison with the OPEX of this project.
Now I much clearer understand what you said is why you need to run studies, because you need to prove the bankability of such a project to the banks supplying the upfront credit.
Exactly.
Wow, that's been really interesting. We really zeroed in on that specific project and its significance. If we look from a much larger perspective, I know just recently on LinkedIn, I saw some harsh discussion. There was one really supplier of decentralized off-grid applications in Africa, and some other person was like, oh, but with these kind of projects, you interfere with the national grid plans of countries in Africa. And so where do you stand? Is there a competition between large centralized projects and decentralized projects? Is it a symbiosis actually, or are there also points where both can run into each other?
The issue of central and decentral ones, or the challenges, potential challenges, prospective challenges, it happens to some industries for sure. Electricity in some countries, we see that they are trying to protect their old central electricity providers. But the issue of water, because again, we can live without electricity, we can't live without water, so it's a far more tricky things. The government or the big companies, none of them can limit the small decentralized solution, because it's a daily life of people. It's not just electricity that in some part of the world still is luxury. Water is necessary, so people make war if something like this happens. So there is a bit of difference when we compare in the renewable energy world of decentralized and centralized. But the other thing is, the places that the decentralized solutions of water go, you rarely, probably less than 1% of places, you see that the centralized solution, they can come there. There was a reason that in the all past decades, none of the central solutions, they could reach there. They are usually so remote. There are challenges, security issues, electricity issues, many things. So I would say, especially in the case of water, we are not much competing. We are just bringing the solution to somewhere that if there could have been a solution, there would have been there before. So we are just covering that part, and so far I've not seen any of the challenges there.
But as we are not 100% that the electricity will not come, the grid will not come, of course it will come one day. This is why we see a lot of investors who are hesitating of going to such new rural areas, because they don't know when the grid will come. Maybe it will come in 2 years, 10 years, we don't know. This is why we are encouraging such project developers, mini grid developers, small system developers, to be ready for the grid. This is what we call it on-grid ready off-grid systems. So technically they have to be ready that one day the grid will come and they will be connected to the grid. That makes it a little bit easier for the investors, for the people who are living there, and maybe sometimes for the utilities who are mostly against such decentralized systems, because they are afraid of losing customers, even if they know that maybe in 10 years that will come to that area. There is still, in some cases, especially when we talk about electricity, try to hinder such development of small and mini grids.
Now, we talked a lot about some really significant projects for Africa. We're recording this year live at the Smarter E Europe. Are there some developments happening in Africa that are not only significant for Africa itself, but maybe because of their leapfrogging nature or their novel approaches, or specifically strong developments in the off-grid sector that are interesting for Europe as well, where we can actually learn from, gain insights from, or even apply it here?
Yes. What I can see from my experience is that in many countries, the experience of local companies are getting higher and higher. It means that the local companies really understands the demand and understand the solution that they need. So they really come to partner with the European German companies, and they know exactly what they want. This wasn't the case, I believe, many years before. And even many German companies are understanding more and more the demand. They don't have just to offer their solution. They need to understand first the demand of these countries, and then create the right solution for that. So better and more sustainable cooperations and joint ventures are coming in such projects. In the past, it was more like German European providers going there and putting their systems. Now you can see really strong and well-prepared local partners. This is something important to mention. The other thing is that the understanding of local governments and local banks is getting better and better. So they are better ready or prepared for such a system, for such financing issues. So I believe that the sector is having more engagement from local companies, from the local population. The understanding for the renewables, for the need for renewables is getting higher and higher among the local population. Local companies are getting more confidence, understanding the demand, understanding the technology, and they know exactly what they need.
And exactly from what Ahmad mentioned, so from all the learnings, we are one of those German companies that we learned also in Africa a lot of lessons that is, I can say, is the most important asset of us, that now many other companies come to us. Some of the big German corporations, I cannot name them, they came to us, can you help us in these things in Africa? Because you have a very much of an African experience now that in Germany we don't have. Apart from that one, your question was very interesting to me in a sense that we've done something in Africa. When we started the work, let's say in 2014, 2015, I could never imagine even the experience that we are start building in Africa one day would be a crucial benefit to Europe upon a huge challenge the continent faced with, the Russian aggression against Ukraine. The same machine we developed for conditions of no electricity, bad water, no water, now is in use in Ukraine. So the very things that we developed and we learned from Africa now has everything that can support Ukraine in this hardship, where we deliver water to 500,000 people by the same technology. Electricity is a problem, the grid is bombarded, water pipelines bombarded, and the solution is the solution can run on electricity from the solar, running on solar energy, and at the meantime, being simple, being easy for transportation, maintenance, and etc. All what we learned from SDG 6, SDG 7 in Africa.
Wow, thanks so much really for joining me today. That's been one of the most inspiring episodes so far. It's been a great pleasure having you here.
Thank you so much. Pleasure,
Thank you very much.
This was already the final episode of our 6-part mini-series recorded live at the Smarter E Munich in June 2023. Make sure to already mark the date for the Smarter E 2024 in your calendar, taking place from June 19th to 21st in Munich in 2024. More information on thesmartere.de.